Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about the deadlift. Look, the deadlift is my favorite lift, so I'm very biased on this. I will admit my personal bias, but I do think when this topic comes up and people think that the deadlift is a dangerous lift, that I think objectively it's just simply not true. I do not believe that there is any real evidence to suggest that a deadlift is any more dangerous than any other popular exercise that we do. You know, and in fact, weightlifting itself is not a particularly dangerous endeavor unless you are, number one, being reckless. Number two, you have overuse issues. You know, and I think people need to remember that, barring freak accidents, which, you know, again, oftentimes is simply not using correct safety. The overwhelming majority of injuries in the weight room are not even down to exercise selection, not even always down to form. You know, the overwhelming bulk of the evidence would suggest that most injuries in the weight room are a result of overuse. Okay? They're a result of overuse. And when you really look at the deadlift, and I think the reason people are scared of the deadlift is because you do see people who execute bad form on it, you know, bad technique. And I don't think it's pulling necessarily with the rounded back. There's actually been studies on that. That's not really as dangerous as people think it is. It really isn't. What we see, though, are back injuries and bicep injuries on the deadlift, again, largely due to two real factors, and that's either horrifically bad form, okay, or overuse, okay, overuse. So, you know, what do we mean by bad form here? What do I mean by bad form? Not pulling the slack out of the bar, you know, pulling with bent arms without your elbow locked, okay, pulling while loose, jerking while being loose instead of tight. I want you guys to notice that on all these reps, I reset and I wedge in tight on every rep, whether it was the max you saw me do there with 635, okay, whether it's that or it's even rep work on the deficit. Notice I wedge back in, we pull all the slack out of the bar. There's no yanking, no jerking. It's smooth, clean, fast pulls, okay? But everything is locked in tight when I do those. All right, back injuries on the deadlift. And again, we don't have data to suggest that deadlift back injuries are particularly a big deal. Doesn't appear to be the case. Comes back to overuse. In my anecdotal observation, okay, and I am fully aware that anecdote is not a replacement, you know, for rigorous science. Okay, I will also make that clear. But in my anecdotal experience of over 2 decades of observing people in the weight room, right, I'm 46 years old. I've been doing this since my early 20s. I have a little bit of experience. Almost every single back injury I have seen, again, the vast majority on deadlifts have been from people doing touch and go deadlifts. Tapping the weight off the floor, bouncing the weight off the floor on the rep work. Okay? In other words, we rarely see the back injuries on maxes, right? And if we do, it's how do I put this? Usually overuse involved with other exercises, and then you'll see it when they're pulling with straps. Because again, we get into a whole different situation with straps. But anytime I've seen someone hurt their back on a max, almost every time I can think of, I've seen a major back pull or injury. It's been pulling with straps, which does make sense. There's some nuance to that. And again, I don't want people to think that I'm saying straps are bad or automatically dangerous. I'm not saying that. There's reasons, though. It usually involves some other overuse going on, followed by a really heavy pull with straps, with usually a weight that person can't pull raw, completely raw, and would just chalk. Okay, so you have that, but then that's actually a smaller number. The majority have been rep work, people bouncing the weight off the floor. Again, I want people to note I reset every rep here. Reset every rep. So here's the thing we come down to. Here's the thing we come down to. If the injuries from the deadlift are from either extremely bad form, right, which I would count as jerking off the floor, slacking the bar, bouncing the weight off the floor, that's the vast majority, and then a smaller number from attempting to pull a weight the person really can't pull wrong when combined with some other overuse going on. See where we're going here? Is the deadlift really a dangerous exercise? Because couldn't we say the same thing about any movement? All right, let me go and put that a different way. Let's think of a movement that I think the average person isn't scared of, that we see enormous numbers of injuries on, the preacher curl. Okay? How about the preacher curl? Preacher curl tears way more biceps than deadlifts do, just statistically. But if we applied that same rule to the preacher curl of how do we see injuries? People using extremely bad form, okay? Ego lifting a weight that they are not capable of really lifting raw. And serious cases of overuse, those three things. Okay, if we applied that same logic and said, well, that's also how people are getting hurt on the preacher curl, would we then label the preacher curl as an inherently dangerous exercise? No. And I think what it comes down to is on the deadlift, because we can move a lot of weight, that's a daunting thing. Because we can move a lot of weight, and because people will ego lift on it big time sometimes, is that probably a factor? Yeah. Yeah. Maybe it's the ego part. And again, I want to be clear. I'm not saying injuries can't happen even just randomly. They do on occasion. But at the end of the day, statistically speaking, if you use decent form and fatigue management on a deadlift, you are far, and I mean by an enormous margin, statistically speaking, more likely to be injured on your drive to and from the gym than you are on the deadlift. Okay? All right? Driving in traffic is actually more dangerous. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.